Good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. My name is Jasper Dent, and I'm the event coordinator here at McNally Robinson Booksellers in Saskatoon. This event is being held on Treaty 6 territory. This is the land of the Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, and Lakota, and homeland of the Métis Nation. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the Saskatoon launch of Nobody from Nowhere, A Story of Leadership, Resilience, and Legacy by Dale Botting, published by Benchmark Press. Thank you to Dale and thank you to Pat from Benchmark Press for working with us at McNally to create this event, and thank you all for coming out tonight. Just to note that this event is being live streamed, so we've got a web camera up to your right, my left up here. It'll just be focused on the stage area. We will not be filming the audience. However, it might pick up your phone if it goes off in the middle of the event, so now would be a great time to silence or turn that off. If you'd like to buy copies of Nobody from Nowhere, we have some up on the signing table here, and we'll also have some on the desk by where you first walked in. We'll have a signing after the event here, and you're welcome to get your copy signed before you purchase it. We just ask that you please do remember to stop by the cash desk on your way out. It's just in the center of the store. All right, now we've got Pat Rediger from Benchmark Press, who's going to say a few words about the book and introducing Dale. So I'd like to invite him to come up now. Everyone, please give him a warm welcome.
So it's a pleasure to welcome everyone to Dale's book launch, and it's really been an honor to be able to publish this book and to be able to work with Dale and bring his ideas to life. So Dale and I actually go back probably more than 20 years. One time Dale was the CEO of the Saskatchewan Trade and Export Partnership, otherwise known as STEP, and I'm sure he'll tell you more about those days later on today. But when we were working with international MOU on trade and investment in Saskatchewan, and there was a group called Trade Team Saskatchewan. We were kind of hired to coordinate it, and Dale was the co-chair of the management committee of that group. So that's kind of where I first met Dale. We worked with him on different things. We worked on exporter readiness seminars and trade retreats, educational trade missions in the United States. So we did all kinds of cool things together. And then, as things happen, people go one way, people go a different way. And so our experience with the MOU expired, and Dale, of course, went on to other different things and had quite a varied career. So really, for me, it was great to get a call from Dale a couple of weeks ago saying he's written this book. It's kind of a combination of memoirs and leadership tips and things over the years. So so it's really great that I guess he chose us to work with him and get the book published. It does kind of seem like in life that different people crisscross into your life. They kind of come in, they go out, and this is kind of one of the cases with me and Dale. Like I said, we spent 20 years ago working on projects, and now we reconnected, and it's been really great to reconnect on this project and work together with him on that. I think probably the other people in the room here have kind of crisscrossed with Dale over the years as well. And I think, when you think about crisscrossing and meeting people, it probably happens because like someone like Dale is always in motion. He's always making things happen. So that's why you probably intersect with him at different points in your life as well. And probably some of the stories we'll talk about tonight, you'll remember some of the ways that you've crisscrossed with Dale. So I guess from my perspective, Dale is always a guy who's getting things done. He's moving forward, and he's doing all of these things despite being a nobody from nowhere. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dale Botting.
Short guy, right? There's still one chair left if there's anybody wanting to take that, I think. And now that area said reserved. Richard, why are you sitting in an area that said reserved? You're not a reserved person.
I'll give you a
Great. Oh, hi, there you go. Sit with your husband. Yeah. Great to see you, Lana. Great to see everybody here. Before I go too far into this, Pat, you're my latest and greatest business partner. It's been fun working with you on this project. And Benchmark is a good company, good publisher. And if any of you get the writing bug, I recommend Benchmark. They're a great publisher to work with. And it was nice to rekindle after a couple decades. Absolutely. So, and you haven't changed. You were follically challenged then, and you're follically challenged now. I can say that.
The reverse is true.
Yeah, right. Yeah, at least it's not white. Anyway, so what an amazing turnout. So good to see everybody there here in this little alcove. My goodness, it's like a lot of my long life is flashing before my eyes when I see everybody here. Some folks here go back a really long way. There's some people in this room that know me from way back. Elaine Wheaton, we were students together in the College of the Department of Geography in the early 70s. Oh, I'm not supposed to say that about you. I can say that about me. That's a long time ago. Some other folks from the last century, Doug Richardson, Eric Klein. We walked alongside each other. I was honored to walk alongside you guys. Lionel LaBelle. Lots of folks here from my past, which is kind of neat to see. And that's the last century. And then, of course, in the new century, doesn't that sound weird? Old century, new century. In the new century, the last 25 years, lots of folks have accumulated in my life, gratefully, because of my work in leadership, fellow devotees of leadership, folks I've coached, folks I've mentored, folks I've worked alongside with. So it's quite nice to see everybody here. It is like a giant. If this is my last hour of Earth, this is pretty not bad, actually. This is pretty cool. So I thank you for coming and a great assembly. I appreciate it. Above all, I want to thank my family. Right, I treasure my family more than anybody, and I want to thank Holly and Heather, Robin. I'm not going to cry. The kids, grandkids, Brody, Harrison, Charlotte. There's another guy missing. He's with his dad right now, right? Is he back now? Oh, great. So Sawyer and then Matt couldn't quite make it. Matt's been away for a couple months. He's just come back from northern Alberta, northern BC on a big two-month construction sojourn. So that's okay. I'll still buy him a beer when I see him. And then of course, sister and brother-in-law, great nephew, great niece, niece, nephew, lots of folks here. So great to see family. And that's the most important thing. In my book, there's a dedication page, and what I say in there, I think it's on the first page actually, a dedication and acknowledgement, and I simply say, I want to acknowledge all of the great relationships that I've been so lucky to have over a 72-year life. I don't mind admitting my age. I'm okay with that. 72-year life, it goes back a long ways. There's also a special dedication in here, and I'm not supposed to talk much about her. She told me that. It's my wife, Rose. And there's an old cliche, right? A common cliche that says, if you're a husband, your wife is your better half. You've heard that expression? Well, in my case, seriously, she is my better half. No doubt about it. She's a way better half. And it's quite true. That was proven once again. We did some editing on this thing. I thought I had a great piece of work until I gave it to Rose. And it was brutal, but it was the right kind of brutality. And she really ended up quite nicely. And it was bang on. It took me a while. In fact, I was so frank. I went out and I got a book. I think I got it at McNally's on how to take criticism, how to take feedback. Because I had to digest all this. It took me a while to process what she said. And in the dedication, actually, I quote, if you know rock and roll, and most of you are my age, or if you don't, you know this, Jerry Lee Lewis, his famous song, where she shook my nerves and she rattled my brain. Yeah, that's what Rose did. But it made it for a much better book. And I had some other reviewers. Some are here, some are not. I want to thank the Honorable, and you are honorable, sir, the Honorable Eric Klein. Eric, you had some great added comments. Mike Marsh is not here. Mike gave a nice referral on the book. Mike's former CEO of Sask Power. great feedback from Bruce Johnston, former business editor of the Regina Leader Post, Saskatoon paper as well, Post Media, and Senator Pamela Wallin, who couldn't be here, but I had some nice guiding lights. None of you were as brutal as Rose, though, I must say. But that's okay. So what's in this thing anyway? What's in this book? Well, firstly, there's a 72-year life in here, and then there's about a 50-year career, actually pretty much 50. Graduated undergraduate 75, so there's 50 years right there. And kind of got busy working, did some other grad work, collected a few other degrees, but 50 years more or less. And then a lot of leadership McNuggets besides the career and the life story, which is the second half of the book. So what I'd like to do in the time we have, in about 10, 15 minutes max, is the following. One, what they say, a good speaker says, tell them what you're going to say it, and then tell them what you just said. Isn't that the old rule of public speaking? So I'm going to do that, Jasper. How's that? So what I'm going to say is quickly a summary of what's in here. Just whet your appetite. Hopefully you'll want to get a copy. Secondly, I've been asked to read a couple of excerpts from the book, both from part 1 and part 2. I won't read long chapters, just some short little quips, but that might whet your appetite. And then I'll stick around, well, for sure. Any questions, comments? I think you want a Q&A session. You often do that, right? Yep. And then, of course, I'll stick around for the signing. I see I even have a Donald J. Trump Sharpie pen. How about that? Eh? I'm going to change it back to Gulf of Mexico. If you have a map section here, I'd like to change it back. Yeah. So that's kind of the outline of where we go. So what's in the book? Well, like I say, the book is in 2 parts. It's a bit of a memoir, both growing up as a kid in Prince Albert, and then later on into some of the formative years, and then my career, including some of the things Pat mentioned. I'll touch on a few others. And out of that, I mean, yeah, we can always write memoirs, but what I tried to do when I did this was capture lessons learned, not just, oh, he did this, he did that. That was part of the brutal critique I had from my editor, Rose. Don't make it look like a resume, but make it look more like a commentary of lessons learned. So there's 64 lessons learned out of part 1, and I conclude each chapter with little portions of them. And then the second part of the book, I hope I don't get sued for this, Pat. I hope you don't get sued for this as the publisher.
Don't say that.
I call it Leadership McNuggets, right? So McDonald's is a pretty big company. I don't think they're going to be rattled by this. I was going to say Dale Bits instead of Timbits, but most people know McNuggets better. So that's the second half. And there's some things in there that I'd like to capture and did in the book, and a couple of things I'll share from you on that as well. So in terms of the 72 years, let me start by saying I'm so glad I grew up analog and not digital, right? When I was a kid, we didn't have microchips. We didn't have anything like that. And it was an analog life, which meant we talked to each other. We actually had house parties and family. And I played in the woods. Actually, I grew up outside of PA. I had this wonderful slough, my happy place then. Now it's McNally Robinson's my happy place. Back then it was this slough just south of PA. Actually, we called it Mars. And I talk about those formative years where I became a biologist very, very young at age 6 or 7. I'm always I'm going to die as a biologist, and maybe a climatologist too, Elaine, a little bit as well. Geographer for sure, physical geographer as well. But that's part of it. And then I go on to talk about how lucky we all are, right? I mean, we have lucky breaks. We don't. We're privileged to know so many people who just give us that little nudge. I had a grad thesis supervisor who took me out of education. No offense to education, George or Dave. Education was a great field, but she took me out of education and said, you don't want to go there. You want to be the research director of the Churchill River Board of Inquiry. So I did that. Really young, actually. I was quite young, lucky, 22, to be a research director of the first major, that and the Berger Commission were the 2 first big environmental inquiries in North America. So pretty lucky. Was able to work on that. From there, we parlayed into some regulatory work in environment. I think we wrote the first Environmental Assessment Act. I was lucky to be one of the co-authors of that in Saskatchewan. And then, like a lot of good bureaucrats, I made money into the private sector. Lavalin said, well, if this guy wrote the act, we got to hire this guy. So I became Western manager for Lavalin Corp. And then the Alan Blakey and his team brought me to Regina and said, no, we need you back. You know the North, you know Indigenous folks. So I did a lot of work on the early first negotiations of the earliest surface lease negotiation, Rabbit Lake, Gulf Minerals, when it was Gulf Minerals. And we piloted that one to include Indigenous participation, both supply chain and particularly labor. Did some other work in the field. Government changed. I didn't know anything about partisanship. I just like to do cool work. Next thing you know, Blakeney's out, Divine is in, and I met quite a group of interesting people around that. And I was involved in streamlining regulation, and then I got involved in a couple of cabinet committees. I was the secretary of the Central and Regulatory Committee of Cabinet because at 32 or 29, I was one of the old hands, right? Because it was a new government, a lot of people were replaced, and they kept me for whatever reason. I think because of my work with the North. And then I became an ADM, quite young, of science and technology. And with the late great Gord Curry, who was a real gentleman, is the minister. And then I had to go back to the private sector. I felt that way. I always had an allegiance to my dad and my granddad, both ran businesses. My granddad ran the Beaver Lumber in PA. My dad was quite a successful entrepreneur across all the prairie provinces, quite a guy, and always a role model for me as well. So I kind of, in homage to those guys, I became first the director of Saskatchewan and Manitoba, then executive director coast to coast across CFIB. Early days, right? We built the CFIB at a provincial level. Up until then, they were a national and Ontario organization. So from Hare Bay, Newfoundland to Tofino, BC, and Whitehorse, Yukon, we were everywhere. And I was building these offices and hiring folks and creating a member services group. So that was quite interesting until I was tired of being a loudmouth. I helped call that chapter the merchant of angst, right? Because if you know advocacy, they like to stir things up. And after a while, I was going through a cognitive dissonance because I like to solve things, not just criticize. And so I thought, let's do a complete about face. And so I left business and I came back to Saskatoon and I headed up Sark and Sarkan, who actually at the time were almost bankrupt. They were so close to insolvency. So that was an interesting turnaround challenge too. A lot of people didn't know how bad it was back then. It wasn't healthy. And I really enjoyed working with folks with cognitive disability. Some of the most refreshing, honest, loving, caring people you could ever meet. So that was really cool. Not to mention the recycling side of it as well. And did that. I think I redeemed my loudmouth image, Eric. I hope I did after that. Good. I got a thumbs up from the minister. That's good. And then missed Main Street. So I went to Saskatoon. I was in Saskatoon, of course, Sark and Sarkan. Came to Shreda and became their first unified CEO. They hadn't had a singular CEO. They had a director of marketing, a great guy by the name of John Hishka, and they had Joan, Joan's name will come to me. She actually, they run the Prairie Lily. Joan and John, Joan was the CFO. And then when John left, they said, well, we need a singular CEO. So I became that guy. Had a great time with them. We did some wonderful adventures, a lot of things. Doug is here. The tornado passed Saskatoon, but for a moment I thought, well, Doug's got to be in the building because in the book I call him a one-man tornado in terms of what Doug did to help get the CLS. And hi, Jocelyn, great to see you as well. We tried to make this science city. CLS, Vito expansion, level 3 lab, and the main building expansion that's there now. Biotech. Now we didn't do this. There's no me. The we is a big we. Right, public-private partnership, but a lot of government money. Eric was involved in Regina, Ottawa. We got the Prime Minister, thanks to you, Doug. We brought the Prime Minister in. We did a lot of other cool things. Indigenous employment. I'll speak about that later in one of the excerpts. But one of the things we did that was way ahead of our time is we created something called the Round Table, and the Round Table was a way to create cultural sensitivity and awareness, so our business community would see Indigenous youth as an opportunity, not as a threat. And we culturized, if that's such a word, all these companies, Canadian Tire, Maple Leaf, or Mitchell's Fine Foods at the time, hotels, you name it. And altogether, we've placed, well, we helped together place about 1,100 First Nations people, First Nation and Métis people. And we follow through with the retention, coaching and monitoring as well. I don't think it's been done actually much since. I wish there'd be more of that effort, but it was truly a rewarding chapter. And I'll put a little sequel on that when I read an excerpt a little later. And then, of course, lots of other things, supply chain development. It was fun to play Monopoly in Saskatoon, 60th Street. I know all those companies because we were involved in placing them through investment attraction and business expansion. So to play Monopoly in real life is really cool, actually. You don't get to do that very often. And then STEP, right? And STEP was a restructuring exercise. STEP was a great company. Alana was my EA when I first came to STEP. And Alana will remember, it was a great company, but getting kind of more like global affairs than a business group, right? We kind of made it more business focused instead. So we aligned our people by sector rather than by geographical area, knowing they still knew the geographical knowledge. And then we tried to make STEP a kind of a global company. We had Next Trade Finance, Next Trade International, Next Trade Training. You remember those, Lana? We had big plans for STEP to make it go global. And ultimately, maybe even become independent from the public-private partnership. We didn't quite get there for various reasons, but it was an interesting sojourn. Back and forth from Regina, lived here, but commuted, and then continued to really commute. My Afghanistan period was when I was Deputy Minister of Enterprise. I call it that for lots of reasons, actually. Regina's not Kabul, by the way. It's not quite that dangerous. It can be. But Enterprise Saskatchewan was an interesting slogan. I talk about it quite candidly in the book. It didn't quite become the actual operational entity in the long term, but we had some halcyon days then. People called it Saskatoon. We had a great public psychology. Brad Wall was very good at elevating public psychology, positivity, which was widely recognized. But we hit it lucky. We hit it lucky. We had a guy by the name of Klein who put together some pretty amazing tax reforms, some pretty amazing royalty changes that helped stimulate. Wall inherited a lot of that. I inherited that as the DM of the economy. We did a lot of other things. We had a major projects group, a cabinet committee on the economy. I went back and I was secretary of that one again. And we actually had a major projects registry, anything over 10 or 15 million. We tracked and we expedited to try to move things along. And we had people assigned to all the projects. Jan, you might remember some of that from back then. Bill was more involved. I think you were still on the regional side more. But we did a lot of stuff on that. And if it was moving too slow, we'd call people in on the carpet a little bit. In a nice way, but say, what the hell? Let's get this thing moving. And so we did quite a few things, and we did some boring stuff that I think is still really important. We monitored and tracked all the deferred maintenance that was falling apart on all the major public infrastructure, which is pretty damn boring, right? But deferred maintenance will cripple the taxpayer if you don't keep it up. And when prime ministers wanted to get shovel-ready projects, we were shovel-ready. We knew where the deferred maintenance problems were and what we had to do. That was an interesting registry. I don't know if it's been done since either. Anyway, that's in the book. I won't go on. That was an interesting time. And then I had this day I like to pick as my last day I ever worked directly for government again. It was called April Fool's Day, April 1st, 2010. And I moved on. And I haven't worked for government since. I worked for Crown. I helped Sask Power with some of their major projects, some of the build out of big transmission lines and generating stations. But other than that, never came back, worked directly for a government agency. And last 15 years, I've had a great delight, first as a management consultant, a strategic advisor to corporations. I thought I was so brilliant, and then my stuff would just sit on the shelf, right? Like some of these books. Great ideas, but not implemented. So then I realized, coaching. Be a business coach. Then it's their idea, not your idea, and help pull that out of the talent around you. Far less ego, which was good, but more importantly, far more effective as a coach rather than as a consultant. And I went from business coaching to leadership coaching, and we have a worldwide leadership network. So many people here actually are in my network even now, today, including Saskatoon folks. So that's what I've been up to there. So that's part one and the lessons learned. And then I'll mention briefly part two, and then we'll do some excerpts as we wind this up. Part two is the McNuggets or the Dale Bits. I still like the name Dale Bits, but kind of maybe sounds like I've been chopped up a little too much. So we'll go with McNuggets. Nice little tidy morsels of stuff. So there's a section on character and how so much of it is built from family foundations. There's a section on what I call agency and urgency, courage as a very important character trait, playfulness, not talked about a lot in leadership. I learned that from my granddad. My granddad was very playful. He used to drive my grandmother crazy. Rose, I think you know where I get it from, hey? But you're way better than my grandmother, frankly. Anyway, playfulness, insincerity, and performative leadership, which is never going to work. Talk about some of the other unique attributes that I think a leadership needs. There's a chapter on how to run to the fire. If you're in leadership, you love problems and you love conflict. They create creativity. It's like a little kid on a treasure hunt, like Brody looking for stuff in our backyard. Like you run to the fire. It's fun. Live in the future, not today, because somebody else has to be in the future. It's usually the CEO or the leader. Somebody's got to keep an eye out around the corner, see around corners. There's a section on solitude, which is grossly under discussed. You need time to think by yourself, to cut out all the noise, all the din, all the sycophants and everybody else that also sometimes follow you in leadership. So you're your own guy, you get your own table of advisors that ground you, who tell you what you really need to hear, not what you want to hear. Solitude. And then illumination, the arts of how to illuminate, find the light inside somebody, not just shine the light on somebody. The power of how to notice, how to really notice, not just what's happening, but what's not happening, what's between the lines, what's not being said. There's a section on make fallibility your best friend. Know what you're good at and stick to that, and don't do the other stuff. I know what I'm not good at. And anybody who's been in my house knows I cannot do anything with my hands. I can't do anything with the yards. I can't do anything with anything mechanical. That's okay. I married Rose. She's the man of the house for all of that. Pardon the pun, or the misogynist reference. Very misogynist, right, Rose? Yeah, keep talking. Is this what we've done now, Jasper? So anyway, make fallibility your friend. Focus on what you're good at. Surround yourself with people, not just in life, but in like a CFO who would also be the black hat and can look for the risks and not just the wild-eyed optimism. And grapple with the stuff that you know you're not great at, but damn it, you just got to get better. Like what I call sort of your deepest moral flaws. We all have them. I know what mine are, and I've got to get better at them. There's no get out of jail on moral flaws. So I talk a bit about that quite candidly, and it's a lifelong pursuit. So all of that I think is interesting. And then I have a chapter on leadership BS, because there's a lot of it out there. I know this store like the back of my hand. So if you walk near the bathroom and to the right, there's the business alcove. I know every book in there, pretty much. Maybe mine next, Jasper, I don't know. But there's a lot of BS in there. No offense, Jasper. I'd love to talk to some of those guys. Guys who talk a good game, but they've never done it. Or maybe it's edutainment. They love their story, like fables. And I won't name names. I don't want to be sued. I think McDonald's is bad enough, right? Yeah, one legal challenge. Eric's the lawyer. Doug's the lawyer. We're okay. So the leadership BS is there's a chapter, and I list them all, many examples actually of what I call leadership BS. And then I have a last chapter, which is kind of personal actually. And I didn't mind. I thought it's a service to share it. It's called Leadership Disease and Disease. I suffered a lot. Here's what happens. If you happen to be good in school and your parents almost overly fawn on you, you become an overachiever. And then when you become an overachiever, you become a bit of a workaholic. And when you're a bit of a workaholic, you become even more of a perfectionist. And then something interrupts your life, like a brother who suddenly gets killed out of nowhere, a mom that dies way too young, a first marriage that falls apart, and you hit chronic depression. And I did. So I don't mind sharing that. I think there's a lot of people depressed in the corner office that we don't know about, who put on their clothes every day like it's a suit of armor. But I thought I'd reach out to those folks because there's a message there too, to watch that slippery slope and work your way out, which I think I did. Anyway, that's the last chapter on leadership disease and disease. So I'm going to end now with just a couple of quick excerpts and then I guess question and answer. I think you want normally about an hour for this. Is that how it goes, Jasper? Or am I talking?
No, you're good. We can start the Q&A in like 10 minutes.
Okay. So I mentioned my first is from part one. There's a chapter, the chapter is called Back to Main Street. And it's one of my most memorable times. I think it was a good age. I was 43, 44 till about 46, 47. I was CEO of Srita when I met many of you. And kind of a peak time for me in a lot of creative ways and building Science City and all of that. And I mentioned the Indigenous Roundtable, but there's a chapter, there's a page actually, I'll just read, because there's an anecdote during that episode I thought you might get kind of fun, and it illustrates a point. In that chapter about my days with Srita and my work with the Indigenous Roundtable, etc., and all the other things, I say I want to end with an anecdote about the day I deliberately decided to commit insubordination as a CEO with my governing board of directors. Near the end of my time with Srita, there was a very heated debate about whether the people of Saskatoon should permit an Indigenous-owned and operated casino to be built and operate in downtown Saskatoon, both as a major new tourism facility and as a significant new source of Indigenous employment. It was headed to a community referendum vote, and many of you might remember that back in the day. To me, it seemed like a no-brainer decision, given the gaming and casino were not going to go away, and especially because this would generate an even bigger opportunity for economic inclusion and reconciliation with our growing Indigenous workforce. Today, it's almost 20% of our community, Métis or First Nation. Yet, to my great consternation, and after much backroom discussion, my Srita board decided not to enter into the debate. I was essentially given a gag order to, quote, stay out of it, end of quote. This seemed to me to be more than a little puzzling and questionable for a board who should support and want local economic development. But it was heavily influenced at the time by one or two board members who adamantly opposed gaming, casino gambling based on their personal philosophy against gaming. It all came to a dramatic point when, in the meantime, it just so happened I was invited to be a keynote speaker at a big local conference on Indigenous employment. Interesting timing. The sponsors and audience wanted to hear about the growing success of that roundtable program that I shared with you earlier, and that we had recently launched. Well, more than a year actually earlier. What irony and what an awkward juxtaposition. I knew that there would be a lot of media and other community leaders there, but in my heart, I also knew that I just had to speak out. In fact, I distinctly remember tipping off a few of my staff and my daughter Kelsey was in town at the time. I remember having breakfast with Kelsey that morning and saying, you know what? And I said this only half jokingly. I said, you know what? This will be the day that maybe your dad will get fired, because I could see it coming. Anyway, later that day, as I went to the podium to declare my personal support and prevent several arguments for going ahead with the Indigenous casino development, I could see the flashing press cameras and felt the media record my impassioned pitch. I tried to clarify that this was only my individual opinion and not an official position of the organization that I worked at, Srita. The Indigenous audience at my speech gave me a big ovation. Sponsors called it refreshing. And of course, wouldn't you know it, the next day, a big story splashed on the front page, pictures, all kinds of stuff around that infamous speech. So I went to that next day after reading the morning paper. Okay, I'm going to go to my office. This will be interesting. And it didn't take long. A few minutes after I arrived at my street office, that there's an urgent phone call from the board chair. I had fully anticipated this. Here's where they will give me the sack, I thought, because of course I didn't stay out of it. I thought I could argue that I had an attempt to separate my personal opinion from my highly visible day job at Srita, but let's face it, it was just too clever by half. The board chair started the call by just asking right out of the blue, what kind of stunt had I just pulled, and what the hell did I think I was doing? Good question. Anyway, there's an emergency board meeting after that, the very next day. To make a long story short, they didn't know what to do with this insubordinate and maverick CEO. To my rescue, I had a great board chair, Joe Vidal. I give Joe full credit. He got it. He said, you know, I don't think I could have done anything differently than what you did. Peter McCann, who's not in this community right now, was a wonderful counselor. He helped build the Ag West bio organization and was very active in biotech. He was on the board. Peter went to bat with me very impassionately, which was great. And to make a long story short, I lived to live another day. I just stopped talking about the casino after that because I already done what I managed to do. Unfortunately, as you know now, it's in Dakota Whitecap. Fortunately and unfortunately, good for Dakota Whitecap. Built major tourism cluster, doing lots of great things there. Could have helped downtown, right? A lot. Could have really accelerated Indigenous inclusion a lot faster than what we've seen. But that's a quick little episode. I conclude here in this little vignette by saying, you know, I also kept my personal integrity intact. I can look in the mirror and say I still did my part when it was time to, quote, meet the moment. And I continue to value courage as one of the most important virtues of effective leadership. And in the back of all my chapters, as I say, I have these lessons learned. Lesson number 44 out of this experience is this one. Lesson number 44. There will come a time in every leader's life where it is time to meet the moment, no matter how uncomfortable or risky or painful it is likely to be. This is how you learn to keep your personal integrity intact, which is more important than any paycheck or momentary title. Like what you see in the morning when you get up like what you see in the mirror when you get up every morning. So that's lesson 44. There's 64 other lessons in here. I could go on about nuggets, the leadership McNuggets. I think looking at the clock, I'm going to cut that off a little tight. I do end the book with a little epilogue, which I didn't mention to you, and it's about how we need a better word than leadership. I really do believe we need a better word than leadership. Leadership, well, it's like the word boss, right? Boss really sounds like paternalistic. It sounds hierarchical, better than. Leadership still has too much of the ego in the word. It's like, oh, I'm the leader of the organization. It's like I'm baked into the cement floor in the wall. It doesn't work that way, right? Leadership is not like that either. The word I like instead, and maybe it'll be my next book, Pat, stewardship is a much better word. It's a good environmental word, right? A very good environmental world as we steward our perilous planet. It's a religious word in terms of stewards for the religious community. But what I like about the word stewardship is, I mean, it emphasizes one, that it's not all about you. Two, you're kind of transitory. You know, when I grew up as a kid, and I worked a lot in the Churchill River later as a fisheries scientist before I later at summer school, and then later on went to the inquiry. But you know, we drive these freighter canoes, and you have these big wakes behind the boat. And it makes lots of noise, and the wake is big, but you know, 10 minutes later, they don't even know if you're there, right? The wake is dissipated. And that's kind of like a lot of leadership. But the big thing is just as a steward, make it a better place while it's your turn. Well, it's your turn at the campsite, right? And before the next camper. Make it a better race when it's your turn as a relay runner around the big relay race before you pass the baton. That's stewardship as opposed to ego-infested leadership. Because we're going to move on, and there's going to be another guy and another gal and another guy and another gal, and on it goes. So that's my last summary reference is how we need to practice stewardship. Again, back to my Indigenous connections. And I've spent a lot of time with about, 40, 50 of the 74 First Nations in this province. I've been very lucky to know culture and language and a lot of other great folks. And I like their reference to 7-generation thinking. And I think it's about leaving behind Harrison and Charlotte and Madeline and Oliver. Where's Oliver? Oh, there you are. Yeah, your hair's so big now. I can't even recognize you anymore. For you guys, right? 3rd generation, 4th generation, 5th generation, 7th generation. That's what ultimately it's all about, as opposed to just your little piece of time where you are. So I just thought I'd end with that. And that's the epilogue as a sequel to maybe leadership. It's about stewardship at the end. So I'll finish at that. I guess, Jasper, you mentioned maybe questions, comments, anything you guys want to, maybe you guys know more about, you do know some stuff about me. This could be dangerous. I'm afraid you're what somebody might say, but especially Rose.
Yeah, I've got a microphone here that I can bring to anyone in the audience who would like to ask a question. I've already got a question back there. Perfect.
Hi, I'm Dave McGrain. I teach political studies at the University of Saskatchewan. So I also have a political question, obviously. So in terms of the, if you think about politicians today, 2025 broadly, what are the leadership qualities do you think that a lot of our politicians possess? And what do you think are the leadership qualities that a lot of our politicians lack?
What a question, Dave. When's the bar open? We can carry on. Moxie's next door. I love Prairie Inc., but I think you're closed at 8:30, right? I'll start with the maybe it's the positives. I mean, clearly people are getting pretty skilled, maybe to a fault at communication, right? Talking points, the glib one-liners, and they are glib, but they grab people. I get that. I mean, when I got to meet Alan Blakeney. Alan Blakeney, and Eric, you know this, Dave, this is before your time, Dave. He was not a flashy guy, right? Alan Blakeney spoke in paragraphs. He didn't speak in sound bites, but what a guy, right? So, but the sound bites maybe is where the audience is. I don't know. What's lacking, I can easily answer that one. One word, character. Character. And that's an issue that I'm really, again, passionate about. You know, you talk about social styles and how to dress for success, how to communicate. But the furnace in your house is really the place that makes everything happen. And the furnace in us is our character, right? It's all about character. We don't talk enough about character. I don't think in the Edwards School of Business there's a class on character, leadership character, or in political science or anything else. So, and I could espouse. I have a lot to say about character in the book. It's a very important word to me. But that would be my quick answer on that one, Dave. Vision, I guess, would be another, right? Oh, and here I go. Now we're going to start the beer. What about vision, right? What about an articulated, effective, galvanizing, unifying vision of the future rather than a divisive future of the picture of the future? That would be the second one. That would be a gap for sure. Lionel, old buddy, 20th century friend, not a 21st century friend.
Listen, Dale, you talk about the depression piece. I was in your office when you were trying to run Enterprise Saskatchewan. I never saw so much paper in my entire life. How did you keep track of everything?
Well, I love paper. That's why I like these books, right? And, you haven't been to the house lately, but there's about 10,000 books in there, Lionel, and I'm a hoarder, right? So that was part of the problem. But I mean, a good management team. Believe it or not, and Rose doesn't believe this to this day, but I knew what was in every one of those piles of paper. Nobody believed me, but I think I did. I know what all my books. The spines talk to me, Jasper. I'm very psychotic when I look at spines. It's like these are conversations with old friends, and so that was my relationship there. Enterprise Saskatchewan was an interesting time. Okay, the actual title I put in my book is I called it the Don Quixote period, because I was chasing windmills. I really thought naively that we would have a communitarian, there's a Roy Romano word, right, Eric? A communitarian version of economic development where we'd have labor, business, educational institutions, small business, resource sector, big business, everybody around the table as a shared governance, and that more of the economic development agenda would be then entrusted to those best and the brightest. But it wasn't, right? It was a political slogan. And this is where maybe we will get sued again, Pat, I don't know. But I candidly talk about how a slogan is not a strategy, and it isn't. And there's several failed tests. I used a baseball metaphor. I won't tell you what they were. I call them strike one, strike two, strike three. I'm out of here. And that's kind of what my history was at Enterprise Sask after that, Lionel, or during that time. Maybe you saw me buried under all my friendly piles of paper as well. But I'll just leave it at that. You can read the book. You'll see the candid nature, and then you can talk to my lawyer, Doug Richardson.
Thanks, Dale. Yeah, we do go back a long time, and it's maybe a good thing that you didn't stay as a biologist because of your contributions. So I've read the book, and he goes into a lot of detail here, but it's actually really funny. So it's even funnier than what he's telling us tonight. So I really recommend it. Lots of learning, and make sure to learn about him and ask him questions, more questions.
Well, thank you, Elaine. Yeah, my grandkids aren't here, but I'm a punny grandpa, right? I'm the grandpa with all the puns and riddles, and I didn't put them in here because they're too corny. But playfulness, right? You gotta be playful. Enjoy what you do. We don't live here very long. None of us, wherever we are. So enjoy it. Have fun.
Hi, I was just wondering about the title. So the book is around leadership, around stewardship, but you chose to name it Nobody from Nowhere. Can you
Yeah.
just link those two things for me?
Well, when I worked on the national stage, they'd say, what are you doing in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, or Regina, right? And I get really angry about that. Like, I'm quite patriotic to my province, but there's that arrogance, you know, if it's outside of the Don Valley, it doesn't exist. If it's farther west, it doesn't exist. So they used to call us nowhere land, right? And then the nowhere, that's the nowhere. The nobody, at the end of the day, we're all nobodies in some way. I mean, we're stewards, it's transient. There's a big universe out there. You look at all the stars, more planets in the universe than there are grains of sand in the entire beaches of Canada, of the world. I mean, that's pretty humbling, right? Hence the nowhere part. So I just thought I'd use those terms to put a little bit in perspective. But the beauty about Saskatchewan is, I call it living horizontally. We have an infinite horizon here, right? That's why I really like the picture that Pat helped pick for the book, the infinite horizon. And when you live horizontally and your horizon is infinite, you're okay with being a nobody from nowhere, right? You really are. It's a blessing. It really gives you a perspective, a humility that I really think a lot of other parts of the world are missing by not living here. It's pretty cool living in Saskatchewan. How cool is it when the weather can kill you in January? That's really cool. So hence the title a little bit as well. I thought, well, not a great way to sell a book. Buy a book from nobody from nowhere.
I had a few questions about your mindset. So what's your mindset when it's like pauses on progress? And what's your mindset when you are trying to avoid all or nothing thinking?
Great question. All or nothing thinking is a huge cognitive distortion, right? Very, very dangerous. I have a chapter actually called The Four Horsemen of the Leader's Apocalypse. And one of them is one of the four horsemen. Well, here's the four horsemen: hubris, righteous thinking, the righteous mind, righteousness. The third is impatience, because you got to take people with you. Otherwise, you're a leader only on a lonely walk with nobody behind. There are days and steps sometimes I felt like that, till I found where they were and I had to bring them back. And then the last is insincerity, right? You got to have authenticity, sincerity. But righteousness is often that black and white, right? It's my way or the highway. There's always options. And that's the fun part of running to the fire, is looking for all those options. Like, my goodness, trying to create them. The good thing of the joy of conflict, and conflict is joyful. I've been married 20 years. We've had a lot of joy. But it's joyful because out of that comes creativity, and 1 + 1 = 5. And again, not black and white, right? So I not to harp on that one point about black and white, but those are parts of the mindsets, right? If you see conflict as an exciting thing, if you know how to do it right and know how to choose the right fight, and then of course if you see problems as the obstacle is the way, as the ancient Stoics used to say. Philosophy section is down that way if you're interested. The Stoics had that line, Marcus Aurelius, the obstacle is the way. And the answer is in the problem itself. And that is so cool when you kind of have that mindset. It totally puts everything on its head, right? Einstein once said, if I had only an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend the first 55 minutes just trying to define it. And I really like that. I really like that guy. Haven't met him. I'd love to meet him. But I mean, that's again, mindset, right? Mindset. Hi, Brenda.
Hi, Dale. Thank you so much for your talk this evening. So how do you keep your optimism fueled? It can feel like a dark,
No.
disruptive, tumultuous time, and yet your optimism shines through. So what fuels it?
Oh, boy. Well, what's the alternative? It's pretty bad, right? It's cynicism? No. I mean, that's too cool to be in school. I mean, what's that, right? And that's just checking out. So wherever there's hope is very important. Hope means action. I think, and hope means even the littlest things, right? And just what you can do. I mean, yeah, you can't change the world. We all know that. None of us can change the world. Nobody, and no matter what leader of the economy or of politics there is, but just your own little piece, at least the act of doing something is helpful and instills some positivity and optimism. And you just keep on trying. Like I say, it's like life is better than is way better than the alternative, right? And optimism is way better than cynicism or nihilism or disdain. We've got to keep on going. It's to me, it's just maybe that's black and white thinking now. Now I'm talking black and white, maybe, but to me, it's the only option.
Do we have any other audience questions here? Oh. Sorry.
Yes.
Hey Dale,
Hey,
great talk.
you're hiding behind the corner.
Sorry, you got a full sold out show here.
I guess, yeah.
Yes. Being a knowledge junkie and news junkie and constantly consuming and actually putting all that information in your head, what do you think of the future that's here and moving forward, where anything that we want to know is in our pocket,
Yeah,
and this tectonic shift that's coming with
Yeah.
society and humans,
yeah.
humanity, even with around technology? Where do you see that going? Does that fuel more your optimism or some
Oh, great.
anxiety?
Yeah, both, right? The answer is in your question, actually. The key is to hang on and cultivate, and more than ever before, and relish and really articulate our humanity. Deep learning, LLM models, machine learning, generative AI. I don't know if they can quite capture that, ever will. The essence of what it means to be human. Emotional intelligence, well, they can maybe fake that, right? But beyond that, character. Will AI ever have character? I don't think so. Even now, I mean, connecting the dots, AI gets really confused if you have a room full of people and you put an elephant in the back of the room and say, what's happening here? The AI kind of freaks out, like, I don't know, like, this is weird, because they don't know how to connect dots and see patterns or metaphors and some of the things that we can do. So I still think there's a role for us as a co-intelligent partner. Oh, well, they're our co-intelligent aid. It is co-intelligence. There's a book out here called Co-Intelligence, by the way, in the back, Jasper. I don't know if you've seen it. It's in your inventory. But there is a way to work with it. But am I worried about the lack of rational thought? Yes. Am I worried about our kids having the attention span of a goldfish? Yes. Am I worried about nobody knowing how to read anymore? It's all TikTok videos and visual, as opposed to context and a longer reference to perspective and context within the written and printed document. I am. I hope it'll come back. I hope it's a little cyclical. I'm not sure. But while I'm still around, I hope we can still keep writing and reading books, because that's a big part of how to stay alive. But celebrate humanity. Humanity. There was a time, you remember, Elaine, well, I wanted to be an anthropologist. I don't know if you knew that. But who hires a cultural anthropologist, right? And the humanities and those other soft quote, remember that phrase, soft science? That's why I went to hard science, right? No occupation. But guess what? The English major, the philosopher student, the art, the person who understands aesthetics and beauty, those folks are going to be what we need. Like, bring on the liberal arts. I really say that as somebody with 4 science degrees. Bring on the liberal arts. It's really necessary.
Hi, what are some of the best ways, in your opinion, to deal with insecurities and self-doubt?
Boy, you keep asking good counselor questions. You want to be my client? Wow. Well, firstly, nobody's hierarchy is for the birds, right? A good friend of mine, Myrna, said, what was it the other day you said to me, Myrna? Comparison is the thief of happiness, something like that. Thief of joy, and it is. So don't worry about where you are hierarchical. That's crap, right? Every one of us has got a gift. We just know it. Maybe we haven't fully understood it. Maybe we haven't fully defined it. Maybe we haven't fully discovered it. So confidence arises from knowing that it is you. You're okay, and forget the comparative stuff, because we are surrounded often by way too much comparative junk that gets in our head. And then find something that kind of roots you, like I think anyway. Like I do mention nature a lot in my book because I am a biologist, but nature to me is spiritual, and there's a humility in nature, right? It's so cool. Again, It's predator eats prey. It's not personal. It's just the food chain. It's okay, you know, but it's the way it is. There's an honesty, a rawness in nature, and we're just part of it. We're one among many species. We're only one individual among our primate species. We're a primate, right? All we are is a primate. We have 98% of what we figured out the other day, Rose, 98% of a chimpanzee, of 94% of a rhesus monkey. We have such fascinating talks, Rose and I. Anyway, we were chatting about that. So, like, get over yourself and just know yourself and know you're just a beautiful part of nature. I don't know if that helps. That's again, I know I'm getting too corny, but some of that is helpful too. Avoid comparison and relish your place in nature and in the universe. Again, sounds very LSD-like, doesn't it?
I think we have time for one last question here, if there's anyone else who has anything they'd like to say to Dale.
See, the grandkids are out somewhere already. Yeah, they did pretty good.
And if not, that's okay. We can move over into the signing
Okay.
and chatting portion.
All right.
Okay.
So you just want me to just sit here and.
Okay, so Dale will be here to sign some books. I'm going to move this whole contraption out of the way here. And yeah, once again, you're welcome to get your books signed before you purchase them. Just please remember to stop by the cash desk. And thank you so much for coming out tonight.
There you go. All right, yeah.